Welcome to the Middle Ground. I'm your host, Ohio Divided. Here we dive into all things sports. Ohio State, Michigan, the Bengals, the Browns, the Reds, college football, the NFL, college hoops, Major League Baseball. And hey, we might even dip into a little NBA when things get spicy. If it's happening in the sports world, we're talking about it right here on the Middle Ground. Before we get rolling, make sure you please like, subscribe, follow, retweet, do all the things that help this show grow. We appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let's get to the show. Breaker, one-niner. Breaker, one-niner. Check one. All right, I think we got it. I don't know what was happening there. I went live the first time, and it completely cut out every time I wanted to talk. It said my USB and shit wasn't working. Not to say I'm any kind of IT guy by any means. I don't really know what I'm doing here. Metal is typically the brains behind all this shit. Those of you that know me know I'm pretty much a fucking brain dead the way it is. So for an issue like that to occur, I did the old unplug it, plug it back in, unplug it, plug it back in, unplug it, plug it back in. And eventually it worked. So if I cut out in the middle of this, I might have to end it early, but we'll see how far we can get. All right. Not a whole lot has happened this week. I mean, we've only beaten Michigan's ass on Saturday. Lane Kiffin went to LSU on Sunday. Monday, I think Michigan State hired Pat Fitzgerald. And then we had the rumors of Brian Hartline going to Kentucky on Tuesday. I'm probably missing something in there. Oh, yeah, the Sataki, BYU's coach, was allegedly going to go to Penn State. Ended up getting more money from BYU, so he decided to go back to BYU. Penn State went into the recruiting cycle with only 3 commits that were even signing. I don't even know how many of them even ended up signing. And then we wake up Wednesday morning for signing day. Here, Brian Hartline's going to USF. We got all these guys that are deciding they're not going to commit anymore. It was an absolute just roller coaster ride this week. And not to mention it, Penn State comes out today and announces that they're hiring Matt Campbell. And I don't want anybody else to forget, Ohio State plays for a Big Ten championship game tomorrow. So this has been the wildest week of college football that I could ever remember. And it is fucking awesome. It's hard to keep up. And man, is it great that Ohio State got Chris Henry Jr. But before that, I want to start on Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline, fantastic coach. You're never going to match, nobody is ever going to match anything that Brian Hartline ever met at Ohio State in terms of recruiting, in terms of development, and where he's gotten into this point in his career. It's honestly amazing that they've been able to hold on to him for as long as what they have. They're pretty lucky that he is a Buckeye and played at Ohio State, so that probably alone kept him in Columbus a little bit longer than maybe he would have stayed somewhere else if he didn't have direct ties to the university. But to those of you who always thought that Brian Hartline was just waiting around for Ryan Day to go somewhere else and then he was eventually going to take over, that was never going to happen. Anybody who said that has no idea of what's going on currently. Ryan Day is not going anywhere anytime soon. I would say he will be the head coach at Ohio State for at least the next 5 more years, if not even longer. So you always knew with the success that Brian Hartline had, he tried the whole OC thing back in 2023. 2023 as a whole was kind of a shit show between Ryan Day, Kyle McCord. Brian Hartline was the OC, ended up not being the OC, and then Ryan Day ended up having to still call the plays, and just not a great year. But crazy to say it's not a great year, and Ohio State still goes 11-1. But anyways, you saw Brian Hartline kind of take a back seat last year. Got to learn from an amazing offensive mind of Chip Kelly. This year slides into the OC position, and he probably has the best offense in the country, which is pretty easy when you have Julian Sand, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, Bo Jackson, and that elite offensive line. So he had a lot of tools and a lot of things around him. But back to the point, those of you that ever he was staying in Columbus until Ryan Day was eventually going to leave or go to the NFL or basically not be Ohio State's head coach anymore, that was never, ever, ever going to happen. So Brian Hartline heading to USF. Obviously, from Ohio State's standpoint, it was a little bad timing. Signing day, I mean, Brian Hartline is not trying to do this. He didn't ever want it to be this way. It's probably just how it all worked out. But first and foremost, props to him. He did a phenomenal job at Ohio State. I think every fan can sit here and say that they are very grateful for everything that he did for the team, for the players that he has now put into the NFL. I mean, you've never heard a single player say anything bad about the guy. And I think the recruiting proof is enough. He was pulling in 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. Every single kid had nothing but great things to say about him. And even today, we'll get to the Chris Henry situation later. Like, he's already the head coach at USF, and he's sitting there talking to Chris Henry Jr. and his entire family. And they're all, like, you can tell there's a personal connection there. You can tell they're telling each other, hey, we love you, Brian. He's saying, I love you guys back. Like, there is a personal connection that I think that he makes with his players. But it goes even beyond that. It goes to their families. It goes to their mothers, their fathers, their siblings. So I think that alone is just what makes Brian Hartline unique compared to a lot of other guys that are out there. So from Ohio State's standpoint, kind of poor timing. You had 4 receivers that were looking to commit or looking to sign Wednesday morning. And early on Wednesday morning, you get the news drops, Brian Hartline to USF. And you start to see like a lot of the receivers that were out there that not going to sign. We'll get to the Chris Henry Jr. stuff later, but I want to spend this portion talking about Brian Hartline. I think that this was a phenomenal decision by him. You always heard him in talks with taking a big-time job first. Like, you heard his name thrown around for the Penn State stuff. You heard his name kind of get brought in with the Kentucky stuff. And he probably could have taken those jobs, and he could have coached big-time college football right off the bat. But I think taking USF is a amazing decision by him. You have so much less pressure at USF. You don't have the tough schedules that you would have in the Big Ten and especially the SEC. From a week-to-week basis, going to Kentucky and dealing with that SEC schedule would have been basically putting him up to set up and fail right off the get-go. So you go to USF, and you're taking over a really, really, really good program. Alex Golsh obviously left, going to Auburn, going to be the next head coach at Auburn. I think that's a fantastic hire for the Tigers. 23-15 over his 3 years at USF. Obviously, everybody knows this year, knocked off 25th ranked Boise State right off the bat, and then knocked off number 13 Florida at the Swamp. Obviously, both those teams have been a little underwhelming this year. I actually do think Boise State's playing for a conference championship tonight, but Florida was very disappointing. But even still, just to be a mid-major school, a school like USF, to go into the Swamp and get a win like that, it's huge for that program. And that's what Brian Hartline is going into. Alex Golesh laid a foundation for him, and I would expect USF to become even better under Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline, there have been rumors that anytime shit gets close or when it comes down to the getting a lot of pressure and whatnot, Ryan Day has been rumored to kind of take over the play calling duties and still call the plays this year. I think I saw somewhere it's a little bit a split of about 60-40 between Brian Hartline calling the plays and Ryan Day, which is understandable. I mean, Brian Hartline, first time calling plays, and that's Ryan Day's thing. That's what he came up on, and he's really good at it. So, but I think the biggest thing for Brian Hartline is you can see, like I talked about with Chris Henry Jr. and his families, the type of relationships and the type of connection that he builds with his players, with his teams, and then even their families. But aside from that, you can tell he's an elite leader. To consistently put product out like he has in his room, he has gotten involved with other recruiting connections, and then you just hear him talk and speak in front of not only Ohio State fans, in front of the locker room. You can tell he's an elite leader where if he can make good hires and have good coaches under him that can call the plays, help develop their position groups, I think Brian Hartline is going to have a fantastic career at USF. He's going to get off on a right foot. You'll probably see USF be one of those schools that are consistently ranked in the 20s as one of those smaller mid-major schools. And I think a lot of that's going to be to Brian Hartline's leadership ability. He's coming from Ohio State, who has a really good culture. And he's sat here and gotten a chance to sit behind Ryan Day and guys like Chip Kelly and Kevin Wilson, offensive-minded guys, and develop some of the best receivers we've seen in college football the last 5 to 10 years. So shout out to Brian Hartline. And one final thing to note, also go down to South Florida. He's recruited South Florida very well. Now, I'm not saying he's going to go down there and be able to start pulling all those 5-stars that happen to be down there, like Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Ennis, and a lot of those other guys. But there's probably going to be some fringe 3-star, 4-star, diamond in the rough type guys that he'll probably be able to get to pull in. And against his talent and his conference, he's probably going to have a talent advantage just because he's going to be able to get kids to buy into his development, his process of what it takes to get into the next level. And he can still go to those kids and say, look, I can go to NFL scouts, and I've put guy after guy after guy after guy in the league, and I can go to them and tell them, this guy is a real one. He's going to be very good at the next level. And there are a lot of NFL scouts that are going to take Brian Hartline's word. So he can use that as his advantage to maybe some of those kids that are a little bit on the fringe, like your ACC, your Big 12 type kids that maybe aren't going to be superstars right out of high school, but he can get a commitment from them to stay right there in USF. Come play for me. I'm going to develop you, and I'm going to get you to the NFL. So I think it's a win-win all the way around for him. He gets a first-time head coach. Congratulations to him. He's taken a job over that is not a Power 4 school. He's not going to have the type of pressure or the type of schedule that he would, and he kind of gets away from the nest a little bit. I do think that we will see Brian Hartline in the scarlet and gray at some point in the future. On to Chris Henry Jr. What a last 48 hours. To be completely honest, I saw the Hartline news come out, and my first thought was, well, I wonder what Chris Henry Jr. is going to do. And he came out, and I think he actually... I was at work. I was working, so I wasn't completely up to speed with everything that was going on. But from what I've gathered, I think he actually put on an Ohio State hat and basically had his sitting at the table like you see all the kids doing, and said he was going to Ohio State, but never ended up signing. And I think a lot of people, or I guess for myself, I wasn't surprised. I figured when you spend, he's been committed to Ohio State for 30 months, and all 30 of those months has been basically Brian Hartline leading the way for Ohio State. I'm sure Ryan Day has gotten involved to an extent, but Brian Hartline was the guy that was getting him to Ohio State, and he was a big part of the reason why he was coming to Ohio State. Even beyond the 30 months. I'm sure they've had a relationship for closer to 3 years at this point. But what this really comes down to, and with him ultimately ending with Ohio State, is I think that just shows the culture and what Ryan Day has really built there at Ohio State. Like I said, I wasn't surprised. If you're an 18-year-old kid, you've spent 3 years talking to this guy who's gonna talk to you about how he's gonna develop you and turn you into this great receiver, and you're going to come play for me for 3 years, and then I'm going to send you off into the NFL just like Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jeremiah Smith, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Mecca Egbuka, Carnell Tate. The list goes on and on and on and on. And you kind of fall in love with that, where you just get under this impression that I'm just the next one up at Ohio State. I'm the next Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith's going to go. I'm going to play for Coach Hartline, and I'm going to become him. I'm going to be the guy, the top 5, the top 10 pick whenever it's my time to go into the draft. And when that guy leaves, you're going to take a step back, and you're going to really evaluate things, which I don't blame him for doing at all. So it sounded like he had some money being thrown around from Oregon, Texas. I'm not sure how. Maybe I don't follow recruiting too awfully close. I know the main guys, but I don't ever really remember Texas being a huge part of his recruiting. Maybe at some points in the middle or early on and whatnot. But kind of the names that I've always heard just surrounding Chris Henry Jr. have always just been Ohio State, obviously, because he was committed there, and then Oregon and USC. So you don't blame Oregon and USC at that point. Brian Hartline, his position coach is gone. You're going to come with money, everything, whatever you want, Chris. We are here to give you whatever you want because we want to make you an Oregon Duck or we want to make you a USC Trojan. So I don't blame him one bit to sit back and kind of evaluate his options and what's all out there. I'm sure he's had connections with some of their coaching staffs. Obviously, Oregon's had their OC leave. They've had some turnover within their program. But then USC, USC, I think from just a production of wide receivers and putting wide receivers into the NFL have a little bit better history than Oregon. You see a few guys that are even playing in the NFL today. Amon-Ra St. Brown came from USC. Malachi Lemon, he's there right now. Jordan Addison, guys who are good in the NFL. Lemon's going to go to the NFL and probably going to be pretty good. So USC had a little bit more, I think, weight to carry in terms of just like getting Chris Henry Jr. convinced as to why he can come there. But the funny part about this was Ryan Day calls Chris Henry Jr. and says, we've had 9 first-round receivers or whatever it is go in the NFL draft. Oregon's had 0. That's what it falls back on. Just because Brian Hartline isn't here doesn't mean that we're not going to run the same Ryan Day offense that we've ran for the past 8 years, however long Ryan Day's been in Columbus. Ryan Day is always going to have a lethal offense with a really good quarterback, other than the 2023 version with Kyle McCord. But he is always going to have a really good quarterback and a really lethal passing attack. So if you're a receiver in and of itself, you're still going to come to Columbus and you're still going to catch a lot of passes and you're still going to score a lot of touchdowns and have a really good shot at getting drafted extremely high in the NFL draft. So I think that played a big part into Ryan Day's message to Chris Henry Jr., and then you fall back on your roots. The culture at Ohio State is very good. That's been well documented the past couple years. I think 2 years ago, there were probably some question marks around the culture at Ohio State. But over the last basically 12 to 15 months, it's shown that Ohio State has one of the best cultures in college football. So Chris Henry Jr. comes out today, goes on Pat McAfee show, announces that he's coming to Ohio State. I don't know if the Ohio State account has actually officially posted anything. I'm going to check right now. Yeah, I don't think that they've actually officially posted anything yet about him signing. But, I mean, he announced he signed. I haven't been on Twitter in a little bit. Hopefully that's not a... And hopefully that's not becoming a thing. I don't know. I'll check whenever I get off here. But anyways, Chris Henry Jr. coming to Ohio State. And I think the biggest thing that I really like the most out of all this is he came out and said he had double the NIL offers than what he was getting from Ohio State. If you're a kid and you're sitting there staring at $4 million and somebody's dangling $8 million in front of your face, that's tough to say no to. But I think that is a testament to who he is, his character as a kid, and his want to be great. Ohio State is not the place where they're just going to throw money around and they're going to give you whatever it is that you want from a monetary value. When you go to Ohio State, you're going to get good money through NIL. They're going to pay you good, but it's not going to be top dollar, and they don't want it to be top dollar. Because the way you find kids that buy into your program, buy into your development, and buy into your culture are kids that are willing to take a little bit of a discount to come to Ohio State to, for one, get developed, and for two, win championships. And that's the program that Ryan Day has built, he's going to continue to build, and what he's going to continue to do moving forward. So for me to hear that he was getting offers that were double the amount of what he was getting from Ohio State, that impresses the hell out of me. All right, moving right along here. I asked Norm if he wanted to get on to talk a little bit about these topics. He said he was getting ready for his New Year's Eve party here in the next couple weeks, so I don't know why he's getting ready for it like 3 weeks early, but his nickname is Norm for a reason, so I guess that does add up. But yeah, Norm, I wonder what his thoughts are on Brian Hartline, Chris Henry Jr. And then the next topic, Ohio State versus Indiana. The part everybody seems to keep forgetting about. We do have a football game this Saturday. I know it's been about 5 years since we played this weekend, but Ohio State does have a football game this weekend. And it happens to be against the number 2 team in the country who looks like they could be at the same level as Ohio State. Or are they? So typically what I like to do throughout the week, I've got a few podcasts that I listen to. I listen to a fuck ton of podcasts. Everything from Triple Option, Josh Pate, Joel Klatt. I listen to a lot of Gary Vee, listen to some other like business type podcasts. Menace of Sports, listen to Menace of Sports a lot. Pardon my take. Like I listen to a shit ton of podcasts. But when it comes down to like trying to form my opinions around a matchup, typically what I do is I kind of take my own opinion and what I think or what I have seen with my eyes and kind of how I think Ohio State could attack or how they'll approach an opponent. And from there, I like to listen to some of these podcasts just to get their perspective and what their opinions are on it. So I did listen to the Triple Option with Urban, Josh Pate's podcast, and then Joel Klatt. And I want to spend a little bit of time just talking about what they said and kind of where their heads were at going into this one. So before we get into it, Ohio State, number 1 Ohio State versus number 2 Indiana. Ohio State is favored by 4.5 points with an over-under of 46.5. So Urban Meyer on the Triple Option podcast, he said that Ohio State has an advantage everywhere. And he said the way he explained it is whenever you look at your matchups, you're given a plus, a minus, or a dash. And a dash is basically just saying it's a wash and they're equal, essentially. So a plus meaning we own the matchup, and a minus meaning they own the matchup. So he was talking in terms of from Ohio State's perspective. He said Ohio State owns the advantage everywhere, has pluses everywhere at every single matchup, except Indiana's defensive line against Ohio State's offensive line. And he said that wasn't a negative. It was just a slash. It's a wash. And his reasoning was the left side of the O-line has been fantastic with Austin Sareveld, Luke Montgomery. You got Hinsman in the middle. But the right side, as we've seen through a majority of this year, has been the weak spot on this offensive line, in particular the right guard spot. It's been a little bit of a revolving door with, I would say, Tegra Shabola probably owning 65 to 70% of the snaps, but you've seen Josh Padilla out there, you've seen Van Sickle out there, you've seen a few different guys that have stepped in and tried to play the position. I have personally thought Van Sickle and Padilla have looked better. I know they've been a little banged up, but I also don't know anything about offensive line play. I kind of just oh yeah, that looked really good. He blocked him pretty good there. Oh, pulling guard. Yeah, he got a nice block on that guy. Oh yeah, he whiffed there. That probably wasn't good. My knowledge of offensive line play is about as low as it possibly can get. So I am not the type of guy that should sit here and give my opinion really on anything about football. I don't know very much when it comes to the X's and O's side. I'm not going to act like I know anything. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what I think with my own 2 eyes and what my opinions are. Yes, I realize I'm a fucking brain dead. You can sit here, you can laugh, you can think they're good opinions, you can think they're bad. I really do not give a fuck. But I think that is something that if you have watched a lot of football in your life, you can definitely say that the right side, and in particular the right guard spot for Ohio State's offensive line, has definitely been an issue up until this point. On to Josh Pate. Josh Pate made a really good point. He said Indiana will be the first team Ohio State has faced that has a top 50 rushing offense attached with a pass game, which is very, very, very true. Somebody on Twitter, I think I posted about this, or I posted a clip of it. Somebody on Twitter had said Washington probably did too, and I thought about it. Yeah, they probably did. I think Ohio State played them the 4th game of the season. Washington had some scrubs that they played at the beginning of the year. I think they were 3-0 at the time, and I think his name was Coleman was their running back maybe. I could be wrong. I can't remember. It's been a while ago. But he was a solid running back, and I remember watching a few of the games before then, and he had a couple of really good games. So I'm sure Washington probably was a top 50 rushing offense, and obviously Damon Williams Jr., solid quarterback. We knew that he could throw the ball. Ohio State completely shut him down. But in terms of what Josh Pate said, a top 50 rushing offense that Indiana has with a pass game attached to it, I agree with that. Michigan was not it. Michigan was a really good rushing offense, but they couldn't throw the ball to save their life. And Indiana is the truth. I went back and I watched Penn State. What was the other one I watched? I watched the Penn State game and I watched the Oregon game. And if Indiana can run the ball and you give Fernando Mendoza time to throw, they're good. They're really good. They can kill you. So that is an element Ohio State's defense or Matt Patricia hasn't necessarily had to prepare for up until this point. Most of the teams that they've played have simply just sucked, or they're one-dimensional and they can do one thing but not the other. Indiana will be the first team that will get on a field with Ohio State and be able to run the ball and be able to throw the ball. Now, will they be able to do it against Ohio State's defense? That remains to be seen, and that's a little bit of what Josh Pate went into. Ohio State's been suffocating on defense this year. They could go in and just be completely unmatched, and Ohio State could completely shut them down. That could happen. But up until this point, and what we've seen through 12 games of both teams, Indiana is the most balanced team from the ability to run the ball and throw the ball of what Ohio State has played this entire year, and it's not even close. Lastly, Joel Klatt. He talked a lot about Ohio State's defense being built to stop Indiana's RPO offense. So under Curt Cignetti, last year's Curtis Rourke at quarterback, they run RPO a lot. And I'm sure most of you know what an RPO is. It's a run, and you're reading a defender, whether that be a safety, whether that be a linebacker. If the linebacker comes up, you buzz the screen past his ear for a pass. If he sits back in coverage, you hand it off. It's a numbers game. If he comes up, then your blocking scheme doesn't have enough guys to block the amount of guys that they have in the box, so you're throwing it. If he sits back in coverage, you're winning the numbers game. Your offensive line is at least a hat for a hat in the box, and you think that you can get probably at least 3 to 4 to 5 yards a carry. Indiana runs the hell out of that. They've been very good under it with Curt Cignetti. Obviously, Ohio State shut it down last year, but that's been kind of their MO. They've been very good at it. And one part that Joel Klatt did talk about was Indiana has to be able to run the ball in order for them to get to everything else. So their run essentially gets teams in the box, and that's when they start to hit you with the RPOs. That's when they start to hit you with Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper. They have the ability to beat you once the run game gets going. So I had my opinion going in. My opinion was Indiana, very good quarterback. He surprised me with how well with his poise in the pocket, his ability to elude rushers, honestly make plays with his feet. He's not a quick guy, but he knows how to move and he knows how to avoid a rush and be effective even though he's not very quick. And I said, if you don't get pressure on Mendoza, like these receivers, and he's a smart quarterback, he's going to make you pay. So after listening to Urban, Josh Payton, Klatt, I think for myself, there's 3 keys for Ohio State to win tomorrow. For one, exactly what Joel Klatt said. Stop the run. And by stopping the run, that means you don't need to bring an extra guy in the box to play Indiana. I think that you can keep that other guy out in coverage to take away the passing part of the RPO. And I think Ohio State's front 7 or front 6 alone is good enough to stop Indiana's run game. I think there was a stat that was out there. Anytime Indiana has faced a top 25 rushing defense, they've had 4 opponents where they faced a top 25 rushing defense, and only once did they average over 3 yards per carry. 4 games they have faced teams with a top 25 rushing defense, and only one of those 4 games did a team average more than 3 yards per carry. Ohio State's rushing defense is ranked 4th. And other than a few big plays that they allowed last week against Michigan, they have absolutely shut down everybody's rush game. Penn State had a little bit of success rushing it to the edge, but it didn't last long. I think if you're going to attack Ohio State on the ground, you can't go up the middle against Caden McDonald. You got to attack the edges. And that's not sitting here saying the edges are definitely a way that they're going to have success either. So that alone, if Ohio State, first key to victory, stop the run. They've shown against good defenses they can't do it. And exactly like Joel Klatt said, once they can't run the ball, that pass game it becomes suspect, and you kind of make them one-dimensional. Number 2 kind of goes hand in hand with number 1. Get after Mendoza. Stop the run. Get pressure. When you're the better team, the better defense, and more talented, that's the simplest way to shut down an offense. Stop the run. Get after the quarterback. Ohio State's more talented. They're bigger. They're faster. They're stronger. If they can stop the run, they'll be able to get after Mendoza and get him to make some mistakes, sack him a few times, and really get them to play behind the chains. If they can make Indiana live in 3rd and long, I think that that's a very good recipe, obviously for any football game, but I think that that's a really good recipe for Ohio State. I think in obvious situations where Mendoza can scramble a little bit, I still think that you probably have a spy on him. He doesn't look like he's fast, but if you go back and you watch games, if you don't stay disciplined in your rushing lanes, as you're blitzing or as you're pass rushing, he's going to find a crease, and he has enough ability to go get 5 to 10 yards scrambling. So I still think that you need to have a spy on him to at least some extent, just to keep him honest, and so he doesn't kill you on 3rd and 9 and he runs for 10 yards to keep the chains moving. And then the last part, My biggest advantage, I think, is Ohio State's offense against Indiana's defense. I think Ohio State is going to be able to do a lot, basically whatever it is that they want, and a lot of what they've done all year. But again, it's Ohio State's way of doing that is coming out on the attack early. What that does is it gets the defense on its heels, and exactly how you did the Michigan game, exactly how you had the game plan in the Michigan game. You start to gash them with runs later, get them on their heels, get them tired. Indiana's got a very good D-line. Their D-line's been solid this entire year. But if you can come out throwing haymakers early, get up a few scores, hit them with Jeremiah over the top, hit them with Tate over the top, get creative in your play calling, sending guys in motion, make them think. They run a lot of zone. There's going to be holes in the defense. Ohio State's wide receivers are better than their secondary. I watched Ethan Grunkmeyer kind of carve them up a little bit. He was able to throw the ball on them. I think that if you come out early with the same game plan, with the same mentality that you did against Michigan, where we're going to punch you in the mouth early and we're going to be taking shots at you, I think you're going to find yourself in a really similar spot where it's third quarter, and then let's get the run game out. They're tired. They're behind. We've controlled most of this game. Now let's lean on them with the offensive line and with the run game. So lastly, come out with that mentality, but the third point, don't turn the ball over. If Ohio State's offense does not turn the ball over, if you're not throwing in interceptions, if you're not fumbling the ball, especially deep in Indiana's territory, or deep in your own territory, I should say, I think Ohio State will be okay. I think they'll be able to move the ball. This defense is good, not great. I think Ohio State has a lot of advantage with the receivers in that secondary. So, when you look at the betting line for this game, I love Ohio State minus 4.5. I really, quite honestly, don't know how it's so low, and that, in a way, kind of worries me a little bit because Vegas, at the end of the day, typically knows more than a lot of people. But I'm also taking at the same point, like Ohio State's like 14, 15, 1-1, or whatever it is against the spread over the course of the past year. So they've been a little undervalued by Vegas. I think Vegas knows that this is kind of one of the better teams, or not better. It is the best team Ohio State has played up until this point, and they might be the second best team in the country. I just think Ohio State is that much different from everybody else. So that I don't know if that's the reason why the spread is as little as what it is. But yeah, I'm taking Ohio State. I think if you even outline that to minus 7.5, I think that they win by even more than a touchdown. If you're really feeling frisky, if you're going to be drinking a lot of beers tomorrow, like I probably will be, minus 9.5 might look pretty good. I love the Buckeyes tomorrow. I think that they're going to get it done. I think it's going to come down to a talent advantage. We're more talented than you. Indiana's very well coached, very disciplined, but Ohio State has the better players and equally, if not better, coaches. And I really think that that's what it's going to come down to. My final score, I don't know. I'm going to kind of come up with this on the spot. Let's go. Ohio State 31, Indiana 16. 31-16. I think Indiana's going to be able to move the ball, but it's going to be a lot of bend, don't break. I think Indiana gets in the end zone once and kicks 3 field goals. Ohio State's offense can do about whatever they want. 31-16 Buckeyes, which would also put that as the over. So if you want to throw some money on the over, go right ahead. It actually hits it by a half a point. I didn't even try that. So I'd put the total right at 47. 46.5 is the over-under. So, very, very, very wild week. It feels like a month ago now that Ohio State put belt to ass on Michigan, 27-9. So we'll see what this weekend brings. I hope that I didn't just speak something into existence with the whole Chris Henry Jr. thing. I know that he said he was signing, but I haven't seen anything actually officially posted, and I just looked at 247. They also say that he's only committed at this point. So I'm not going to say anything. I was honestly one of the people that was saying that even if Chris Henry Jr. did leave, even if Coach Hartline did leave, Ohio State would be fine. They have great leaders. They have a great culture. They're going to live. One coach, one player doesn't end Ohio State. So I don't know. I'm going to keep an eye out on that, see what happens. Some good games tonight, conference championship games. I think UNLV and Boise State play. I think James Madison plays. And there's also a pretty good college basketball game tonight. I think it's Gonzaga against Kentucky. I don't know a whole lot about either Gonzaga or Kentucky. I would probably, gun to my head, take Gonzaga just because I think Kentucky's dropped a few to this point. But yeah, another good night of sports ahead, and we'll see where we end up on Saturday night. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. If you could please like, subscribe, retweet, do all the things that help this show grow. Our YouTube is popping right now. TikTok is popping. Instagram is popping. Twitter is gaining a lot of new followers. So if you're new here, thank you. I'm a brain dead. Get used to it. I say dumb shit.